Today I want to look at some ruins. I won't delay anymore. Thanks for being here. I hope you're all doing well, and welcome. I want to look at some ruins in America. Recently we will have looked at the ruins of Chicago, and by now I think we've looked at the ruins almost everywhere. In my opinion, this is the most fascinating research in the world right now. For the last 20 years, people were looking at the pyramids, both Egyptian and Mayan, and then it turned into alien and really got nowhere. Just a detraction of the truth, in my opinion. And now we have the gist of the story. We're at least on the right track. And I say it over and over, but I have felt this about the old world architecture my whole life. But without the help of a community, one is isolated and has a difficult time validating one's thoughts. I feel like when I started doing this research and started making videos, some of the best research was coming out of Russia, and for us in America was shared via Sylvie at New Earth. But it still was set back and seemed removed from the way we see it today. The way we see it today is it's everywhere, and it's the glorious buildings and the ordinary ones. All the old brick, the towers, and really shattering the Roman idea. But the Roman idea is a good one. It's a good place to start. It's a good baseline. Because they would tell us these Roman ruins, here we're looking at Pompeii for example, are old, or we are told. This gives us a baseline. 1,000-year-old ruins, at a minimum, according to the narrative. In some instances, we are told this goes back to 79 AD, at least the destruction of it. But many conflicting dates, even in the narrative, officially. So we can look at it two ways. Let's say these ruins in Pompeii were 1,000 years old, to be generous. So here we would be told that this brick held up for 1,000 years. These columns being made of a cement, and then we could jump over here to Mississippi, as we did in the last video briefly. And here in Mississippi, we have the same kind of ruins. The same. Brick faced with a concrete, just as we see in Pompeii here. And that would leave the layman scratching their head. One could put the puzzle pieces together in the wrong way and think, wow, these ruins could also be as old as Pompeii. Here in Mississippi, same condition, a little more moisture here, soaking into the bricks. And that's one way to look at it. From one perspective, these ruins could be up to 1,000 years old in America. And that may most likely actually be the truth, is that all these ruins throughout the realm could be up to 1,000 years old. The part that's missing is all of this may have been destroyed as little as 200 to 400 years ago. All of it at the same time. Every city in the realm, and even remote parts in what is now country, have been wiped out, showing these same ruins. And then in the 1800s, people just arrive amongst them. And stories are created to how they got there. Stupid stories, as we've enjoyed researching, such as the Windsor ruins here in Mississippi. This was supposed to be a cotton plantation. Why would you do this for a cotton plantation? We are told the man made a fortune in the 1800s having a slave and cotton plantation, and he decided to build these Romanesque architectural feats. This is what he spent his plantation money on. Here we're told this is what it may have looked like, some computer rendering, but I think it looked like every glorious building in the realm, and these are just the ruins, and the rubble has been carted off and used as building materials long ago, and all we're seeing is the bones, what they could not cart off. And this is just what I needed when I began this research, is finding sites like this, resembling the ruins of the so-called Romans, and we have them. We have them all over America. And what's changed is the understanding that these ruins are brick cord, and the brick is what ties everything together in this research. It's the part of the puzzle that even the narrative has no explanation for, where these zillions of bricks came from in times of old. Everybody building in the same style, no exception, and producing the same bricks. Bricks that have the capability to last 1,000 years, not like the junk we make today. And I wanted to share a few finds in my last video that were left in the comments. Here is the Longwood Plantation. So again, a plantation. And this is not in such a ruined condition. Here we can see it in times of old, clearly when it was found, and doesn't look like it's being used, completely overgrown, but survived, and we can still view it today. And this would be a Civil War or pre-Civil War construction. We're told it was halted during the Civil War, and clearly was finished without a hiccup. So here we go. It was halted, or the construction was, during the Civil War. And this does not look like something that someone was building before and after the Civil War. Thank you for sharing this. And here's a little look at the inside. Lots and lots of brick. And here's some old pictures of it. This is my favorite, an image like this. Here we go. So are they really building this? No, this thing just looks like it's in ruins, trees growing right up to the edge of it, and here is what we have built. Here we go. Does this seem like the same builders? Even when I build a chicken coop, it resembles my house. It's just a small version of my house. In fact, everything I build looks the same. Not very impressive. But here, from this to this, why even bother with this? What is this? They put a fireplace in it. Let's compare their chimney to this one. No comparison. I don't even think this one is straight. And then I just got kind of crazy and just started throwing darts, feeling confident that we could find the same ruins anywhere. Recently we looked at some ruins in Indiana. I made a video on it, and they had turned it into a little park and recently closed the little park. And we're told they spent millions to renovate it. Just comical. Where did the millions go? This was said to have been moved to this park from New York City. And it's very easy for me to get sidetracked. I must stay on point. But here, the abandoned ruins in this Indiana city are oddly beautiful. That's what they have to say. Gary. Oh, this is really good. What a gorgeous picture. Gary must be referring to Gary, Indiana. Here's another look at Gary, Indiana, or the ruins of it. So here's America. Here is the America that they failed to mention, instead portraying a stupid pilgrim that would have starved if not for the Native Americans, portraying up to the Civil War a stupid horse and wagon, log cabin living people, while this stuff was laying in ruins all over the country. No mention of it in our history. And then when we do start researching it all, just the stupidest stories given. Here, some more ruins of Gary, Indiana. Unbelievable. Look at this. And a viewer recently shared the Wetumpka ruins in Alabama. We'll have a little look at that. Here we go. Looking very Pompeii. Looking very much like everything, once again. And this particular landmark, we are told, is a replica of the Temple of Hera. And this one is absolutely fascinating. I encourage anyone to get out here and check this out. I did some research on it a few days ago, and I was absolutely upset. In short, the park has recently been closed and is not open to the public. In short, a replica of the ruins of the Temple of Hera. Are you serious? We're supposed to believe that they built it to look like ruins? That's what we're told. Please let me know anything about this, and this may require a call to the local municipality in charge of governing this site. It's bad enough when they demolish sites, but then when they're still standing, they make them off limits to the public. Here we are in Florida. Like I said, I just started randomly typing in state names followed by ruins, and every single state turns up sites like this. Here we're looking at Florida ruins, and Florida just mind-blowing, just ruins everywhere. Even on little remote islands, similar to the Fort Jefferson ruins, which is now a national park. 16 million bricks on an island in Florida, and really not hiding any of them. I mean, just calling everything ruins, but attaching a stupid story to it. Our story in this community makes more sense than any of the stories. A one-world people, a unified people of the same mindset, building in this style realm-wide over 200 years ago. And by the time the people wake up to it, we're so deep, the people are so brainwashed, they don't even see it. You could just call them ruins, give tours, tell your BS narrative, and people will accept it and kind of scratch their heads. And I think we get it. It all makes sense to us. It makes sense why the buildings go down 2 or 3 stories into the ground. You just wouldn't build brick into ground level. And here we are in Argentina. Again, I was just throwing darts, and here we get these, what our narrative calls Greco-Roman architecture, all over Argentina. And not only preserved, but in ruins as well, just like in the Americas. And here we go for the San Francisco ruins. This is what we get at a snapshot. Same, same, same. And if we played Where Are We, one might think we were in Pompeii. So I don't know if I've made a good case. I think I'm gonna follow up with a bonus rant in nature. When I started this channel, I worked at a hospital in the maintenance department. I was an electrician without a license. I had no interest in becoming a master electrician, but it was a good job for the time. I worked there for 5 years. Before that, I was a dishwasher. I was at the lowest point as far as a source of income is concerned. But I set myself up to be doing well even if I was washing dishes or working at a gas station. Once I understood the scheme of life, and really through my parents, I think we all see the world through our parents first, and I realized it was ridiculous. Paying rent, paying utility bills, being in debt, it seemed unfair. And yet growing up in Arizona, being surrounded by Native American culture, I began to love the Native American ideas. And I thought it was a more fair and just way of life. The most basic things like land and water were not owned. And today we have governments who are supposed to care about us, and yet they don't give us land. And we're stuck in the rat race. We must rent a place. I rented my first place when I was 18. A little apartment in what must have been a hotel at one point, and it was in Flagstaff, Arizona. I paid about $350 a month, plus some utilities. That would have been in 1994. I had a good time. It was right by the train tracks, and one day I rode the train from Flagstaff to Winslow, and the train continued, and I took it all the way to Gallup, New Mexico. On the way back, it stopped in Winslow, and mind you, it was a freight train, and I was just in a boxcar. On the way back, I wasn't able to jump on a boxcar. I had to jump on a flatbed with a truck on it, and I just tucked myself under the wheel and the mud flap of the truck, and I was completely exposed, and when it stopped in Winslow, I was arrested. I paid my ticket a month later and received a trespassing charge. I was trespassing on the train, and I don't think I was hurting anybody. I asked the police officer after he gave me a citation how I should get home, and he told me to go down to that truck stop and ask a trucker or hitchhike, and I did. Got a ride with a nice trucker. He bought me Taco Bell, and I vowed to live like the Native Americans, or any free people. There are free people still today, living naturally as they have for generations. And these people are constantly threatened by the modern world that we live in. Their lands are threatened, and their way of life, and their water sources, and wildlife that they may be dependent on. Everything is constantly encroaching on the natural world, even here where I live. And for me, this is a worst-case scenario lifestyle. I chose the worst-case scenario lifestyle before the worst-case scenario. I've set myself up for anything. And not really anything, but as much as I could afford to. Long ago, maybe 20 plus years ago, if you would have asked me about things, I would have told you that this realm gets cooked by the sun, what we call solar flares. And even when I moved out to this land, it was apparent. This land is just a mud flood, as if a tidal wave of water was washed up in this area, covering everything with about 3 to 4 feet of random rocks and minerals and petrified bits and oceanic debris. And after that, the sun had solar flared, X-flared so hard that it baked all the rocks out here. All the rocks that had been washed from who knows where, that don't belong here or anywhere around here. And then all these rocks, or petrified bits or whatever, fossils, and there are many ocean-like fossils, were hit by this coronal mass ejection, or the solar flare, and it baked all the rocks. All the tops of the rocks are baked, and then when you flip them over, they're much paler on the underside. The tops are just cooked and cracked from what seems to be heat. It just becomes apparent through observation. And perhaps my problem is that I've been, or had been, listening to Coast AM, originally with Art Bell, later George Norrie, and I'd heard thousands of guests talking about all different topics. I started listening when I was 16. My girlfriend had a late-night paper route in her car, and she actually turned me on to Art Bell. And we started listening at 16, and I heard people talking about all different subjects, safe zones for end times, different theories on the controllers and the powers that control the realm itself, whistleblowers that worked with the government in secret projects, sometimes military personnel talking about giants, and even biblical scholars dissecting the Bible in a much more thorough way than I ever would be able to. What would take, and what took them 20 years. Now I'm hearing their works encapsulated in an hour or two, one evening, for example. And all this kind of steered me to do what I've done, and to do what I still suggest everybody does. Once you realize the falsities of the system, to continue to participate in it would be even more foolish than somebody who knows nothing of the falsities. I guess what I mean is it's like, have the knowledge and you do nothing about it. And it's difficult for me to not address this, even in every video. I think it's perhaps the most important thing. I told many of you I had an off-grid channel, and I was trying to share these ideas, and it got canned. And I think that's really what it boils down to. People can know everything there is to know, and maybe they don't care, as long as they don't do anything about it. As long as they don't exit the Matrix. And what do I talk about? What do I tell a stranger about my YouTube channel? Well, usually I don't. I don't even want to go there. And if I am talking to, say, a friend, most of my friends don't even know or care what I talk about on YouTube. But if I did try to sum it up, it's just way too much. Way too much. Maybe a dozen topics that should be digested separately. And then you try to explain to somebody, you try to crash course. And really, what do I even know? What can I even suggest? Truly, all this research would have just led me to the life that I'm living. If I hadn't already begun, I would be preparing. And there's one part, the part of evil men, that is worth exiting the Matrix for. I mean to say that's enough. And we see what they do and how they want to intrude with our lives and how they have made just a crappy system. Again, so far away and far removed from the values of the traditional Native American. How true any of that was, I'm sure it was, because it still goes on. It's still being practiced. We can see it today. But then there's the other element. There's the reset factor that comes from the sun, the luminary, whatever it is. We don't even know. Even with all the research on the shape of the realm, nobody really knows what that luminary is. Personally, I feel like it's a lot closer, and it's moving around up there. And if it got any hotter, we would see things begin to malfunction, including people. And one of the biggest ones for me was what's called the Carrington event. And I'd heard of the Carrington event again on Art Bell. And the Carrington event happened in recent times, within 100 years. And it was said to be an X-class solar flare that knocked out the telegram system all throughout the realm. And more impressively, what happened was the aurora borealis, or the northern lights, were seen as far south as the equator. And it was said that it created a glow in the atmosphere, like we were in a light bulb and the filament had surged. A glow in this dome that we're in. And these experts on Coast to Coast were saying how if such an event happened today, that it would knock out the transformers and knock out the entire grid. And there were other guests that would talk about other situations that could take out the grid and the fragility of it. And there's a million different reasons. But ultimately, I think this system is very fragile, and we should be in control of our lives as much as possible. And it makes me sick to see a world where people pay. And I had to pay. I paid up front. Yes, we must still pay our yearly taxes in many cases. But I'm still not there. I'm not in control of my food 100%. I could be if I got serious. But I just wanted to share all that. Again, I think it's more important than anything. Pretty soon, their system will become a privilege in which you must comply to use. And I feel grateful every day that I'm able to continue to use the system. Every day that passes is a blessing. But if the system should fail, I've been preparing, mostly mentally, for another way of life. And I think that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed. I love you all, and I'll see you next week. God bless.